Welcome to today's edition of Monday Data Webinar. I'm Martin Carlson. Today we got Kerry Graham from Matillion to show us Matillion Data Loader. It's a new product from Matillion and I'm really excited to learn about it. A bit of housekeeping. This webinar is set for half an hour and then maybe we will go over time if there is a lot of questions and discussions. Just ask as many questions as you like. Just fire away. Again, thank you very much for joining. And Kerry, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin. I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, hello everyone. My name is Kerry Graham, and I'm a Partner Technical Success Manager here at Matillion. I'm really excited to show off the Matillion Data Loader product here for you today. A couple quick notes about Matillion itself. It is an international cloud software company whose products are built for migrating data to the cloud. All Matillion products, such as the Matillion Data Loader, or as I will probably be referring to it a couple times as MDL today, as well as our flagship ETL product, are purpose-built for the cloud data warehouses, Redshift, Snowflake, BigQuery, and later this year, we will be introducing Azure Synapse. The main difference between the ETL and MDL products is the ability to transform the data as it is located in the cloud data warehouse, only achieved by the ETL product. And Matillion brings value to their customers in the following 4 ways. Simplicity, in that over the course of 4 or 5 clicks, a user is able to set up a new pipeline, and we try to build each of our products upon the concept of simplicity so that any user, no matter what their experience may be in the realm of data, will be able to have quick turnaround from concept to value in any job that they may be building. Speed and scale, in that our products utilize the resources of that respective warehouse. So for example, as Snowflake is fast and scalable, so is Matillion. And the value is to increase productivity during the development process and to shorten that time to value. As far as savings are concerned, the Matillion Data Loader product is a costless solution to begin importing data from an on-prem source, or as you will see, a variety of different sources, to the cloud. So you have a low-risk, high-reward solution for possibly beginning the entry into the cloud data warehouse realm. Just a couple quick notes about the modern data analytics ecosystem. The left side hasn't really changed. There will continue to be a broad variety of constantly changing data sources that businesses will need to access. On the right side are powerful BI, analytic, and data science solutions. And the middle would normally represent legacy solutions. You would have on-prem data warehousing solutions involving individuals with a specialized set of skills needed to maintain the solution on a 24/7 basis to ensure availability for the rest of the team. What's different is the middle and the inclusion of players from the cloud data warehouse environment. Analytics need to be enabled, but how do we do it in a smarter, more scalable fashion that is inclusive of skill sets as opposed to only relying on those who can address the technology on hand? That's where the enablement of cloud data warehouses coupled with the capabilities of Matillion come into play. By utilizing the format of push-down architecture, using a code-optional interface, you're now able to leverage the architecture of a solution whose security and maintenance won't require a specialized set of skills. Rather than an investment into a solution which an organization has to adopt as a whole, that organization can now scale up and use their solution at their own pace and leverage cloud economics. As a result, there is a much shorter time span from concept to execution. Moving data from the different sources on the left into the cloud data warehouse, and by transforming it as well, it will enable the right side. Getting this middle piece right is where businesses will gain advantage over others and begin to unlock insights. Today, we will be talking about the zero-cost solution to experiment with and adopt cloud technology. we call this Matillion Data Loader. As Martin mentioned, this is something that was just introduced this year, and we've been able to receive a lot of great feedback on it thus far. And we will be going into the tool today to show you exactly what the UI looks like, how to set up a pipeline. And by the end of today, you'll be walking out with a great understanding of exactly how the tool works, and then you'll be able to begin creating pipelines yourself. So for such customers as those who are jumping off into the cloud data warehouse realm, they can become acquainted with the web-based low-risk Matillion Data Loader. Within it, they can set up as many data pipelines from a wide array of sources into a cloud data warehouse environment of their choosing at whatever frequency these loads should take place, all within a matter of a few clicks. And as it relates to our previous diagram with the data analytics ecosystem, this represents the E and the L into the cloud. So the extract and load of data, whereas there are no transformations that are available. And to touch upon a quick case study before we begin taking a look at the product, I would like to talk to you about DocuSign. And DocuSign had developed a strong business intelligence infrastructure and robust set of analytic solutions that they relied on for data-driven business decisions. But as they continued to grow, it became clear that this infrastructure wasn't going to keep pace with the demands of the business. They needed to modernize to allow for better performance, scalability, and flexibility. And as a solution, they selected Snowflake as its cloud data warehouse provider and used Matillion to facilitate DocuSign's transitions to the cloud, aggregate various data sources, and 3, create dimensional models needed for downstream consumption by other BI and analytics tools and teams. And as a result, they reduced the time required for long-running jobs from over 22 hours to just 6 hours. So they nearly quartered that amount of time utilizing Matillion and Snowflake. And the entire infrastructure was running in Matillion in just 2 days, and the entire data engineering team was using Matillion as a power user in just 14 days. All right. So now that we've gone over some of the background information, some of the concepts that we'll be covering, I'll go ahead and jump straight into the actual demo of Matillion Data Loader. And as Martin mentioned, please feel free to ask any kinds of questions. I do have the interface open so I can see whatever questions may be entered. But if you have the ability to unmute, please go ahead and do that as well. As mentioned, any product that will be released by Matillion will be built upon the concept of simplicity. In that spirit, in order to sign up for Matillion Data Loader, there's only 2 pieces of information that are needed, being an email and a password. There's also an agreement to the terms of service and the privacy policy, which are linked. And the user also has the ability to set up single sign-on via Google. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And as you can see, it's completely web-based, so any kinds of updates that will be made to the product will not require any downloads of a client to a local machine, will not require any in-depth install on the basis of an organization, but rather this will all take place within the web-based application. As I've been logged in, I can see that there are a few new items on my screen. The first is that I can see already existing data pipelines as they are currently existing within Matillion Data Loader. There are 3 different pipelines. First is at the very top. I can see the source being Jira. I can see an interface that also relays to me the number of rows of data which were loaded in the past 30 days. And I can see the target. So if my organization were to include several different cloud data warehouses, this would all be included within the product. Similarly, as we will soon see, there is a constantly expanding set of sources by which I can extract data. Within run history, I can see the past 5 iterations of a load. So as we will see, we can be able to set up a frequency as soon as 5 minutes. And there is no limit to the number of pipelines that can be set up utilizing this frequency. But I can see here that I have a daily load of data from Jira, and by going into the info button, I can generate a log as to what the result of the particular iteration was. So if I'm having any sort of issues and I need to get in touch with a solution architect within Matillion, this is within the fingertip, or this is within a touch of being able to be accessed by any user. Navigating a little bit further down the list, I can see a visualization of the total number of rows which were loaded in the past 30 days as broken up by day. And I can see in the upper right-hand corner the total number of rows that my organization has imported into the cloud data warehouse over the past 30 days. One thing that you will notice within any Matillion product that will be released is the ability for users to empower themselves and to be able to, just within a few clicks, be able to access help documentation. As you can see here in the upper right-hand corner, we do have a help button, which I'm able to click. And by going to community support, it will take you to a portal that a user will be able to enter search terms to bring up articles. So again, this is something that, hopefully they aren't experiencing any issues, but if they are, there are resources available to the user. Also up here, I can see a manage button. One thing that is going to be very consistent, again, with any Matillion product is the ability to manage certain pieces of information to provide a connection to a source or a destination. In that spirit, we have the ability to save passwords and save destinations, as well as other pieces of information within the interface. And this is a way of not only being convenient so that you're not having to rifle through papers or emails anytime that you want to provide a new connection, but rather it is secure. This is information that is completely encrypted. After I've saved information, I will not be able to view a password, for instance. I'm not able to edit a password, but rather it will be simply saved in here and unable to be accessed by any subsequent users. So let's go ahead and begin creating a new data pipeline. All I will need to do is, as you can see, we have a add pipeline button in the upper left-hand corner, which I will click. And we can see the 15 or so different sources that I'm able to extract data from at the current time. As Martin mentioned, I believe I mentioned it as well, this is a product that was released earlier this year, and we are constantly adding to these new sources that will be able to be extracted data from. What we're interested in extracting from is the on-prem Microsoft SQL Server source. And what we're interested in doing today is importing data from that on-prem source to Snowflake. And the content that we're interested in extracting is sales-related data. So we're going to be beginning this import and having our data exist in the cloud. And I also have my interface open for Snowflake so that we can be able to see the creation of tables and the new load of data as it will exist in my environment. So upon clicking Microsoft SQL Server, I will go ahead and click Next. From there, I can select the destination warehouse. As we can see here, we do have Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, and Snowflake. And as mentioned, at some point, we will be including Azure Synapse. I'm interested in including Snowflake. As we can see here, I can select any previously set up destinations that I had set up in the past, but what I'm interested in doing is setting up a new Snowflake connection. So I will do that by clicking Manage. Here we can see the already saved destinations, the different environments within Snowflake that have already been set up, but I will click the addition sign button in order to set up a new one. And I will need to provide a name for my Snowflake connection. So I will say that this is my Monday webinar Snowflake connection. And in order to provide that connection, I need 3 pieces of information, being the account, and I can be able to access this very easily by going to my Snowflake URL and selecting everything leading up to Snowflake computing. And this is on a 14-day trial instance of Snowflake, by the way. And I will go ahead and enter that into account. And I will also enter a username and password, which are used to log into Snowflake. As mentioned, Matillion includes a password management feature. So I can go into Manage and set up a new password. So I will call this, again, my Monday webinar password. And we have the ability to set up a description. And I'll click OK. And here we can see I have a new line for the password, which was just set up. And let's say that I know that I mistyped. I wish to go ahead and edit my password prior to moving ahead. And I'll click this pencil button. And the only thing that I can see that I'm able to edit is that actual description. So again, going back to what was just mentioned, I believe 5 minutes earlier, in the setup of any password or any authentication information, there's no ability for a user to be able to see that information, much less edit it. So I'll click OK. And I will select my password from the new dropdown and click Next. From there, we want the user to be very explicit in how they define the default role, warehouse, database, and schema. And this will be largely dependent upon the location in which they wish to save their data. So in that spirit, I will ensure that I am going to be a sysadmin. I will be utilizing the compute warehouse, and I will be saving in my demo database. And so that we ensure that users are not flying blind, we have the ability to allow the user to click the test button in order to ensure that there is a success message which is received. So I can go ahead and click Finish and OK. And now I can see that I'm able to select my Monday webinar Snowflake connection from within the destination configuration. Similarly, I also have to set up a name for my pipeline, in which case I will say that this is SQL Server Sales. Next. And now I need to begin entering in information as it relates to my actual SQL Server connection. I will be entering in JDBC driver information with my actual database name at the very end being AdventureWorks. And I will similarly be entering in a username and password, which I can also set up using the password manager feature. Upon doing so, I'll click Next. And then we can set up different parameters, so different properties by which our database will need to exist in order to extract data from it. And we can see a long list of different properties which we are able to set. I'm not interested in setting up any parameters, so I will go ahead and move ahead. We can also specify the schema, and we can see the database that we can extract data from. After selecting Sales LT, I am then presented with an interface in which I'm able to extract as many tables from this database as possible. What I'm interested in is my sales order detail. And I will select it by moving it to the right, and that is done by highlighting it and then clicking the right-facing triangle button. I also have the ability to move all of my data sources over. However, as mentioned, I'm only interested in my sales order detail for the purpose of today. We then have an interface in which I'm able to explicitly define which columns I'm interested in extracting. And as we can see, we can establish primary keys, and we can also set up incremental loads. So if there is a column that we are interested in Matillion Data Loader understanding if there are any deltas, and based on the presence of those deltas, the load of data will take place. We have the ability to set that up within the select columns window. So I'll click OK and click Next. And for any Matillion product, we abide by the best practice of staging, then loading our data. As we can see, we have the default warehouse, database, and schema already set up, but I'm able to select it explicitly from these drop-downs. And as you can probably deduce, we do not have a already existing staging table called stage underscore, but rather Matillion will automatically set this up for us. So I will call this my stage SQL Server sales. And similarly, we are presented with a interface for the actual target table. So the destination which we will ultimately be loading the data. I'm also able to set up if there's a concurrent or sequential concurrency. And then from there, I have the ability to not only set up the frequency of my loads of data, but I also have the ability to set up a notification system in the event of any failures within our system. So as you can see, within this dropdown, I'm able to specify as frequent as 5 minutes. And this is completely dependent upon the parameters which I've already specified. So if I did set up any incremental columns, then Matillion Data Loader will be able to check for the presence of a delta on a 5-minute basis. Similarly, I have the ability to specify if I don't ever want to hear about any kind of notifications that would take place within the Matillion Data Loader application, I can be able to set that as never. Also, I can also set up a notification system so that any time that there is a failure, I will be receiving a notification to my email, which has been set up in the system. I can gauge my frequency of notifications. Similarly, we have a test button in which I'm able to render a success. And then we're able to see that we have been able to sample the data, and then we have been able to specifically target the data that will be loaded itself. Upon clicking Create and Run, my data pipeline will immediately be created, and I will begin extracting data and loading into Snowflake. So here we have it at the very bottom. And upon having set up, I can go into the Manage button and be able to see specific parameters as they exist for my actual data pipeline. I can go into Info in order to see the exact parameters that were set up for the pipeline. And I'm able to go into Edit Settings in order to edit the frequency and the email notifications. And it's important to note that currently, these are the only settings that are able to be made. If there are any changes that need to be made to a data pipeline, this will need to be done by creating a new data pipeline. So I know that I probably don't need this run every 5 minutes, so I will reset the frequency to 1 day. And I'm also interested in setting a email notification for every single failure. And I'll click OK to confirm. And this data pipeline will continue to have the spinning dial as it is in progress of loading this initial iteration. And that is, and that concludes my Matillion Data Loader presentation here today. So I would like to go ahead and open up the floor for any kinds of questions that anybody may have. I see that we already have an initial question, and I can see that is pipeline connection by server or database, and As you can see, we have many different ways of setting up the different pipelines as they exist in Matillion Data Loader. And depending on the source, you connect to a certain database. And as you can see, I included that in my JDBC driver information. And this can also be defined in a property set up within the source. And we have another question. Can we run a pipeline manually without scheduling? The only way that I can think of as far as being able to set that up is to initially set up a pipeline just as I have done here. And after that initial run, then I would disable the pipeline in order to ensure that there are no further scheduled runs in the future. As far as being able to manually kick off an MDL load, that currently is not available. And we have another question about how does pipeline work with files? So pardon me, I don't quite understand the question, but of course, as you're utilizing these data and you are adding different pipelines, there will be different batches that will be included. So for example, you can be able to set up Excel in order to explicitly define a file which should be loaded. We have another question. What is the backend code converted by Matillion to process data? So I can't go too in depth as far as the architecture or the underlying concepts by which Matillion Data Loader exists. I can say that for any Matillion product that we leverage push down architecture within every single cloud data warehouse. And so, especially as it is loaded from a staging table into the destination table, there will be a copy into command. But as far as the actual retrieval of data, I apologize, I can't go too in depth into that.
And then we have another question. Can data be loaded in parallel?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, as far as having different pipelines that are running in parallel, that is absolutely enabled within MDL. I can set up as many pipelines at whatever frequency matches my business process. And if these frequencies overlap, then there shouldn't be any issue.
Okay, and then the bane of every ETL developers. I think I will expand a bit about this one. If the database or if the table schema changes in the source system, how are things handled in Matillion Data Loader? Or did that make sense?
Yeah, could you repeat the question for me, please?
Yes, the question is, do we have to set up schema for target in case of non-matching data types? I think the question is, how does the schema look on Snowflake?
Okay, so currently, I work with customers to set up different pipelines within MDL, and as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I understand it, Snowflake automatically detects the incoming data, and it's able to establish which data type should be set up as a parameter in order to load the data from source. This is, of course, something that can be set up ahead of time, but as shown with the setup of this pipeline, we can automatically have a table set up within Snowflake, and it can be able to load many different data types.
Okay. Just trying to follow the amount of questions.
Sure. No, questions are good.
Yeah, I think it's really good. So a question is, can you expand on how many clients that is using MDL today?
Ooh, that is a great question. I don't necessarily know the number as of right now, so apologies for that.
So more, and also to expand it a little bit on the question, what about Matillion? What is the adoption on Matillion right now? If you know that, I mean, you're an engineer, so maybe this isn't the right forum to ask.
No, I think it's a great question. Unfortunately, I just don't know the adoption rate. I will say that Matillion Data Loader is largely a promotional type of product. As mentioned, it is completely free. There are as many data types as I wish to set up in order to get my data into the cloud. And it's really meant to help customers transition over to the Matillion ETL product, because as their process matures a little bit more, they will need to then help transform the data as it exists in the cloud data warehouse. And so we typically see that change quite often, moving from Matillion Data Loader to the Matillion ETL product.
Okay, so a question about can you set dependencies between two ETL or two pipelines?
At the current time, we do not have any sort of dependencies between two or more ETL pipelines. One thing that I could say, just an example I thought of off the top of my head is if you have incremental loads that are loading into the same table, and if you have incremental load columns set up between two different sources, Matillion Data Loader can detect the deltas between those sources and understand if there are any loads that should take place.
Okay, but generally, if you want to set up dependencies and I mean be a bit more verbose in what you're doing, you should test out the full product. Because this has a scheduling and dependency and everything that you need when you're moving data from A to B.
That's an absolutely fantastic sentiment right there. Yeah. As far as dependencies between pipelines, the Matillion ETL product is much more explicit in being able to define those dependencies.
Yeah. And here's a question. Data loader is just data replication to destination, or does it allow any transformation during the load?
There are no transformations that are able to be set up currently. As we saw within the interface, I defined my source, I defined my destination, and I defined the frequency. And then I let Matillion Data Loader run and begin loading data into that destination. For any kinds of transformations, we recommend that the Matillion ETL product be used.
Yes. And also to say, correct me if I'm wrong now, but the way that Matillion or the way that Matillion works is that Matillion creates, or you create the transformation in Matillion in the graphical user interface, but the power, what is it called? The transformation, the physical transformation, is done in Snowflake or in the source database.
That is absolutely correct. And it is a detail that I was completely remiss to not have included. And it is that at no point does Matillion ever house the data in memory. We don't move any data to a server. Rather, the movement of data from a source to a destination it is entirely composed of commands that are pushed down to that cloud data warehouse. So, and similarly with transformations. Matillion, again, never holds the data, never performs transformations when the data is in memory, but rather we are pushing that SQL statements to that cloud data warehouse to ensure that it is all housed within the warehouse.
Yeah. So practically, Matillion is creating, in the transformation step, Matillion is creating SQL and send it to the database, and then Matillion tells the database, now you should run this.
Absolutely. And if you have a deep knowledge in SQL and you wish to see exactly what these SQL commands are, we're very explicit in showing the user exactly what these SQL statements are within the ETL product.
And as experienced with Matillion, I can say that the SQL that is generated is quite well written. Even though it's generated, it's actually possible to read. Not all systems has so well crafted SQL. So we got a question: can we select more than one incremental key?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I'm not sure that is something, let me go ahead and check it out. Yes, thank you for the question, which is helping me learn a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and set up my pipelines once again. And I want to select Sales LT. Okay. So if I wanted, let's say, my modified date to be the incremental key, it would appear that I can set up multiple incremental keys.
Wow.
So thank you for the question. It's a learning experience for all of us.
So what happens? I think to expand a little on it, what happens when the data load fails? It could be the source, but also in the target. What if the data is rejected by Snowflake, for example?
Right.
Yeah.
So with the within the interface, we do have information for the past 5 iterations, and I can see that for each of these iterations that they were successful, as noted, there's a little bit of background noise. I can see that there's green check marks next to each iteration. Now, the UI would be a little bit different in the event of a failure, in which you'd see red X's. And so Matillion Data Loader and the Matillion ETL product both abide by the use of color to denote success or failures in the load of data. And in the event that there was a failure, I can go into this info button and really key in on exactly where that failure might have taken place, whether that was within the source or the destination.
Okay. Then a question: if Matillion is not storing data or metadata anywhere, then how does it detect delta changes?
Again, this is a question that deals with architecture, and I can't quite go into it very deeply. But Matillion is able to detect data as it exists within Snowflake, as well as the source, and be able to detect the deltas there. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if there is the use of metadata to detect these changes, but that is how it is essentially undergone.
Okay. Then a question, and I think that you could answer both for Matillion Data Loader and for the main product, because I think the answer is different. In Matillion, do we have a restartability feature from the aborted job task and skip the job task which will already run?
The answer is no. The next time that a job will run will be dependent upon the frequency which was set. So if you set up a daily iteration and the job today fails, then it will likely be loading again tomorrow. And yes, the user does not have the ability to manually skip or abort or anything of that nature.
But in the main product, Matillion. But again, to answer the question, not in the data loader, but in the main product, Matillion, you can set up your load as you want.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep the answer as simple as possible because
Yes.
I know that we're skipping around between Matillion Data Loader and Matillion ETL as much as But Martin, you're absolutely correct. Within MDL, the job is not able to be manually run. Within the Matillion ETL product, it is.
Yeah. So, and here's about speed. How fast is a loader in general? Say 1 million records to load.
That is very much dependent upon a couple things. So the source and how the connection takes place. Naturally, there's going to be sources in which data is able to be extracted at a faster rate. Also within Snowflake, you can be able to modify the warehouse size. And this is the compute layer within Snowflake in order to ensure quicker loads. So going back to the presentation really quick, I can see that my 542 rows have loaded from Microsoft SQL Server. And let's see. Yeah, and I can go into Snowflake, be able to refresh. And my table as it exists will be able to be seen. So 542 rows, and we don't have too many metrics as far as the amount of time that it actually took, but it may be something I may be able to extract from the actual server log.
Yeah, actually, it could be interesting to see the data, how it looks in Snowflake.
Sure. So here's our table. So our target SQL Server sales order detail table. And we see an interface that relays to us the 542 rows. And by going into warehouses, I can query against my table. Oops, excuse me, worksheets.
Oh, cool. You have a newer version of the Snowflake interface as I do. I see you got in the new data marketplace.
Yeah, look, as mentioned, this was just the trial instance of Snowflake that I set up last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's our data as it exists in Snowflake, and I'm able to work within whatever my data process may be.
Okay. Cool. And do we have any other questions? Oh yeah, that is actually interesting. Could you show the query history or the query history in Snowflake?
Apologies, I don't know how to do that.
You click on history on the top.
Ah,
Yes. And this is usually a bit slow sometimes.
Okay.
So it will come. Yeah, and here you can see everything that happened.
Okay. All queries which were pushed down. Also, within the server log, you are able to see the query which was issued to Snowflake. So here you have it right here.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, and it makes sense because in here you can actually ask Snowflake about this incremental key.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Were there any specific query that you wanted to see? I'm asking the person who asked the question. No. And have we answered all questions now? Looks like it.
Excellent.
Excellent. Well, I think we're done for now. And thank you to all the listener who stopped by. And thank you for your presentation. It was very informative, very interesting to see. I learned a lot, and yeah, it's a new and really interesting product, especially when you want to do a POC or just demo or just prove that Snowflake and Matillion actually work together. So I think it's really great.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. And as you could see from the URL, it is dataloader.matillion.com. So I invite everybody to go ahead and play around with the tool and set up a pipeline of their own. And thank you very much for your time today and getting to know Matillion a little bit better.
Great. So every Monday we have a new webinar. Next Monday it will be a relatively technical webinar about Snowflake, and the week after that there is a specific query engine gigaspaces that are mainly used for really high powered real time analytics. So this is something that banks, for example, would use instead of or to supplement their old mainframes. So it may not be something that everybody has right now in their work, but it's still, I mean, I think it's really cool to hear about technology that are happening other places than where you work. And if anyone has an idea for a webinar, just hit me up and we'll talk about it. Well, thank you, Kerry and Matillion, and have a great Monday.
Thank you. You too.